Why do our schools need to transform today? That question is no longer theoretical, nor does it belong solely to the realms of educational policy and academic discussions. It has become one of the key developmental issues for any society that wants to remain competitive, socially stable, and culturally relevant in the 21st century. The world is changing rapidly, and education must keep pace with these changes. The speed of technological, economic, and social transformations today is such that educational systems can no longer afford slowness, inertia, and reliance on work models that were shaped for completely different historical circumstances. Technological development and globalization are transforming every aspect of our lives and economies. The way we communicate, work, make decisions, produce knowledge, and participate in public life is changing under the influence of digital technologies, artificial intelligence, automation, and global flows of information, capital, and labor. Schools can no longer be just institutions that transfer stable knowledge from teachers to students. In a time when information is no longer rare or hard to access, the function of the school must go beyond mere content transmission and focus on developing students' thinking, judgment, understanding, and equipping them to use knowledge meaningfully. The true value of education today lies in the ability to understand, analyze, and apply information in every situation. In other words, it is not crucial only what a student knows how to reproduce, but how well they can connect, interpret, evaluate, and apply what they know in new, changing, and uncertain circumstances. The OECD's Learning Compass 2030 emphasizes the development of transformative competencies in every student. This framework clearly indicates that modern education must equip young people not only to adapt to the world, but also to shape it responsibly through creativity, collaboration, problem-solving, and ethical action. UNESCO emphasizes sustainable development, ethical use of technology, and digital citizenship as the foundation for a fairer future. This means that education must simultaneously develop the intellectual, social, and moral capacities of students so they can use technology responsibly, understand global challenges, and participate in building a more sustainable and humane society. The first 4 grades are crucial. It is during this developmental period that the foundations for the future success of students are laid, as key patterns of thinking, attention, motivation, language, and attitudes towards learning are formed. Here, the basic cognitive abilities of our children are developed. If understanding, reasoning, work discipline, and curiosity are systematically developed during this period, later educational progress becomes significantly more stable and profound. Students must acquire basic skills: reading comprehension, mathematical thinking, and self-regulation in learning. Without these fundamental competencies, there can be no later success in natural, social, artistic, or technical fields, as they are the foundation for any further acquisition of knowledge and the development of intellectual autonomy. We are transitioning from mechanical memorization to deep functional understanding of how the world works. This means that students should not only memorize terms, formulas, and definitions, but also understand their relationships, principles, causes, consequences, and possibilities for application in real life. But how to achieve that? The key question of reform is not only what we want to change, but by which pedagogical path we can reach sustainable, quality, and measurable change in the classroom. It all starts with the principle: pedagogy must take precedence over technology. Technology alone does not guarantee the quality of education. It becomes a developmental resource only when it is thoughtfully integrated into teaching, in accordance with clear educational goals, working methods, and the developmental needs of students. The dynamic structure of time implies a rotation of the teacher's explanation, active student work, and reflection. Such an organization of teaching allows students to simultaneously receive expert support, space for independent cognitive activity, and the opportunity to become aware of how they learn, where they make mistakes, and how they can progress. One of the most powerful tools is heuristic teaching, based on the principle of guided discovery. In this approach, the teacher does not dominate with ready-made solutions, but carefully designs situations in which the student, through cognitive effort, with support and guidance, arrives at understanding. Instead of providing ready-made answers, the teacher leads students to insights through carefully crafted questions. Such questions are not just a mere check of knowledge, but instruments of thought. They encourage comparison, reasoning, argumentation, reflection, and the construction of one's own understanding. This approach develops critical thinking, intellectual independence, and self-confidence in problem solving. A student who learns heuristically not only becomes more successful in school, but also develops skills that are crucial for lifelong learning, professional adaptability, and responsible civic engagement. To support this, new types of materials are needed. Heuristic textbooks that offer challenges, not just definitions. Modern educational materials must be designed to activate thinking, pose problem situations, offer multiple perspectives, and encourage students to explore rather than passively copy and memorize. In higher grades, students transition to abstract thinking and more complex logical reasoning. This is a developmental stage in which teaching must become more intellectually demanding, conceptually clearer, and methodologically more diverse, so that students can build a deeper and more structured understanding of complex phenomena. Project-based learning becomes a key instrument that enables the exploration of real-world problems. Through projects, students learn to connect knowledge from multiple areas, plan their work, gather data, collaborate, present results, and take responsibility for their own learning process. For example, climate change connects geography, biology, and mathematics, teaching students to analyze data holistically. Through such topics, students simultaneously develop subject knowledge, the ability for interdisciplinary thinking, and an understanding that real problems almost never belong to just one school discipline. Secondary education must prepare students for a knowledge-based society and a dynamic labor market. This means that schools must develop not only an academic foundation, but also the ability to adapt, innovate, work in teams, possess digital literacy, and solve problems in complex professional contexts. We are introducing more research activities, laboratory work, and simulations of real challenges. Such forms of work allow students to experience knowledge as a means of understanding and action, rather than as a set of abstract facts detached from practice. Flexible organization of teaching, such as block classes, gives students the time and focus needed for deeper exploration. When a student has enough time to delve into a problem, to make mistakes, to question, and to try again, then higher quality, more stable, and functional knowledge emerges. The method of assessment is also changing. Educational reform cannot be successful if the outdated model of evaluation, which measures only short-term memory and speed of reproduction, is retained. We are transitioning from high-risk testing to continuous formative assessment. This means that evaluation should become an integral part of the learning process, not just a final mechanism for selection, pressure, and administrative ranking of students. This means tracking progress and providing feedback that helps students understand their own thinking processes. The essence of quality feedback is not just to tell the student whether something is right or wrong, but to help them understand how they arrived at the answer, where they went wrong, and how they can improve. Digital technology and artificial intelligence are powerful allies, as they enable access to resources and personalized tasks. Their greatest educational value lies not in attractiveness or speed, but in the ability to support differentiation in teaching, adjust to the pace of students, and provide access to quality sources of knowledge, AI can analyze responses and suggest personalized learning paths, but the teacher remains the central figure in the learning process. No algorithm can replace the pedagogical judgment, ethical responsibility, emotional sensitivity, and professional assessment of the teacher, who alone can fully understand the student as a developing individual. The success of any reform depends on our teachers. No strategy, platform, curriculum, or document will produce real change if the teacher is not empowered to understand the reform, accept it as a professionally meaningful process, and competently implement it in the classroom. Teachers need continuous systemic support and training. This includes quality initial education, ongoing professional development, mentoring support, professional learning communities, and institutional conditions that enable reflective and innovative practice. Successful countries like Finland and Singapore demonstrate that investing in teacher quality has the greatest impact. Comparative educational practice clearly confirms that sustainable quality in the system does not primarily arise from technology or bureaucratic control, but from a high level of professionalism, autonomy, and social esteem of the teaching profession. This transformation is a journey. It is not a one-time administrative decision, nor a project limited to a few school years, but a long-term process of changing the culture of learning, teaching, assessment, and education management. By 2030, we are laying the foundations. By 2035, full integration is achieved. Such a timeline indicates the need for phased, realistic, and strategically guided development, in which changes are introduced systematically, evaluated systematically, and refined based on evidence from practice. We must preserve fundamental academic disciplines, while simultaneously developing modern, necessary competencies. Reform is not a renunciation of knowledge, but its conceptualization at a higher level. Classical disciplines remain the foundation of intellectual culture, but are complemented by competencies that enable their contemporary application. The message is clear. Education must shift from the reproduction of knowledge to the development of thinking. In other words, the school of the future does not measure its success by how much content it has delivered, but by how much it has developed the understanding, independence, and thinking power of its students. We do not need students who only memorize. Society does not need passive information executors, but individuals who can think, evaluate, argue, and act responsibly in complex circumstances. We need young people who know how to ask the right questions. The ability to ask quality questions is one of the highest marks of mature thinking, as it precedes research, innovation, scientific work, and any serious problem solving. Our reforms are based on a long-term vision and a systemic approach to all levels of education. This means that changes must not be partial, fragmented, and short-term, but interconnected through the curriculum, methodology, assessment, professional development of teachers, and institutional management. Only then can our educational system become a stable foundation for a successful knowledge-based society. Education is not just a public service. It is the developmental infrastructure of society, without which there can be no innovation, no social cohesion, no democratic culture, and no sustainable economic growth. Together we are building a school that understands the future. It is a school that does not react late to changes, but anticipates them, thinks them through, and prepares students to actively and responsibly participate in them. Let's start that journey today. The biggest mistake would be to wait for a more favorable moment, because the educational future does not happen by itself. It is built by the decisions we make now. To summarize, we are transitioning to competency-based learning, focusing on critical thinking and the application of knowledge. The essence of this change is that the student is no longer assessed solely on what they can repeat, but on how they use knowledge for understanding, reasoning, and action. We adopt heuristic pedagogy, where guided discovery replaces passive memorization. This makes teaching intellectually active, developmentally stimulating, and focused on forming independent, curious, and responsible students. We are transforming assessment to ensure continuous feedback for the development of each student. Assessment should no longer be just a final judgment, but a professional tool for tracking progress, enhancing motivation, and building the students' awareness of their own learning. Visit our CRY site and learn more about how you can be part of this educational evolution. Educational transformation is not just a task for institutions. It requires the involvement of teachers, parents, researchers, decision makers, and all those who understand that the future of society is inextricably linked to the quality of schools. We put pedagogy before technology for a brighter educational future. This message summarizes the essence of our vision. Technology makes sense only when it serves the development of thinking, humanistic values, and a higher quality educational experience for every student. Serbia 2035, a vision of excellence in every classroom. It is not just a slogan, but a strategic ambition that the quality of education should not be a privilege of certain schools, communities, or students, but a standard available to all. In collaboration with the CRY Center, a leader in the development of digital competencies. Such collaboration provides the reform with a professional foundation, interdisciplinary breadth, and the developmental energy needed to translate pedagogical innovations into systemic solutions. Welcome to the classroom of the future of Serbia. It is a space where knowledge is not transferred mechanically, but is built through understanding, dialogue, exploration, technology, and meaningful pedagogical guidance. The journey has just begun. That is why now is the time to set high standards, clear goals, and sustainable support mechanisms, so that this transformation has a long-term and measurable effect. We are building a smarter world, one lesson at a time. Every well-designed teaching situation, every stimulus for thought, and every feedback that leads the student forward represents a concrete step towards a knowledge society. Thank you for your attention. But even more than attention, we need a shared understanding, professional dedication, and a willingness to truly change education in a way that corresponds to the times we live in.